Chapter 21 Party Foul, Part 1. Thunder boomed overhead as lightning ignited the sky. I found myself gasping for breath as my back collided against the cold earth. Rainwater pooled against my brow. No, it was just sweat. The confetti falling from the sky was real, though. I blinked, and the clouded gray skies were replaced with a high ceiling and artificial lights. I found that the pressure against my chest was my own palm, clutching at my sporadic heart to vainly calm it down. As the confetti settled around me like dust, I noticed how painfully quiet it was in the room packed with ponies.
Well, come on, every pony! Hunter's here!
Daisy called.
Let's get this party started!
Further back in the room, a band filled the air with lively music, and a dull roar accompanied it as the citizens of Ponyville began to mingle. I was left on the floor and took the opportunity to wipe my face of the sweat and confetti starting to stick to it. It wasn't long until the familiar faces of my friends appeared above me. "Congratulations, Lyra. You broke him," Noteworthy deadpanned.
Oh, shut up!
She hissed back. But as she looked back down to me, her expression quickly melted into worry.
Hey, you feeling okay?
She asked softly. "Yeah," I lied with a croak. You just surprised me, that's all."
Are you sure?
Daisy asked skeptically.
You look pale. Like, really pale.
Everyone nodded with her, and I tried to give a reassuring chuckle. You, really surprised me." I smiled, hoping to pass it off. They still didn't look convinced. I sighed and held up a hand. "Here, just help me back to my feet." Zecora and Noteworthy reached out and pulled me up. Fluttershy hovered overhead with a guiding hoof and a worried look.
It wasn't too much, was it?
She pressed.
Oh, I knew we shouldn't have turned off the lights. Those kinds of surprises scare me too.
Fluttershy, I'm fine, I assured her as I got back to my feet. And I wasn't scared, just startled. That's all. My friends backed away a few steps to allow me to gather my senses and take everything in. And even then it almost wasn't enough. How many ponies were in here? I couldn't count. There was almost enough to fill the entire auditorium. Some were even in the balconies high above, and Pegasi darted across the air. Some even sat together on the rafters. What is this?
It's your party!
Daisy chirped. It's practically a Ponyville tradition at this point, Noteworthy chimed in. Newcomers always get a welcoming party. Since your first visit was, He coughed into his hoof and tried again. Since you never got a proper welcoming party, we decided to throw one for you. And this many people decided to come? I asked skeptically. Do not be so surprised at the display before your eyes, Zecora pitched in. I've told you before of the stories of my early days, when my visits to Ponyville were met with frightened craze. Once the truth was uncovered and we rooted out all misconceptions, I was greeted with the warmest of receptions.
Like Noteworthy said, it's kind of a tradition,
Lyra added.
It doesn't matter who you are or what any pony once thought of you. These parties are special. They're meant to bring every pony together.
She studied my face and rolled her eyes.
Come on.
Lyra's horn glowed, and I felt something tug on my wrist. She walked into the crowd of mingling ponies, her eyes never leaving mine with that knowing smile. The rubber band around my wrist tried to follow, pulling my arm towards her. I looked back to my friends for support, and all they offered were parting smiles as they went off to mingle. Realizing that I was alone on this front, I allowed the rubber band to guide me, trying to ignore my skin crawling around the magical force. We paused deep in the crowd. The band was playing not too far from here, and the ponies nearby were moving more to the rhythm. Why did you bring me out here? I called over the music.
So you couldn't sneak away,
she answered with a smirk. She gave my leg a prod.
Don't pretend like you weren't thinking about it. I saw that look in your eye. This is your welcoming party. Wouldn't make much sense to throw it if you weren't here to enjoy it.
I must have looked as willing as I felt, and she sighed.
Look, I don't want you to feel like you have to be here.
It sounded like a lie, or at least as though there was more to it. I raised an eyebrow. But... Lyra hesitated.
But we did work really hard on this,
she admitted with a sheepish smile.
Like, you will not believe the trouble I went through to plan and throw a party this big in one day.
She glanced behind her towards the band and looked up to me with excited eyes.
Come on, let's go dancing.
What? Oh, no. I waved my hands as I backed away. You do not want to see that. I have 2 left feet. You go ahead, though. I'll have fun. I'll just hang around. She looked at me with disappointment in her eyes, and she tried and failed to press a smile. I promise I'll try to stick around and have fun, okay? Lyra sighed and shook her head, but this time a more genuine smile showed.
Fine. I guess you lead a human to a party, but you can't force him to dance.
She slowly started backing into the crowd, her body already subtly moving to the music.
If you ever change your mind, though, you know where to find me.
Something inside me tugged after her as she left, but my feet were anchored in place. Dancing sounded fun. It really did. But I didn't need all these eyes staring at me as I made a fool of myself. I was already starting to gather a few looks. I ran my fingers through my hair and turned to search for a familiar face. Noteworthy was sitting at one of the tables close to the buffet of sweets, talking to another stallion and a mare. He saw me and smirked, obviously catching on to the desperation in my eyes, and waved me over to join them. With a sigh of relief, I began to wade my way through the crowd. There were so many waist-high bodies. I felt like I was going to trip at any moment.
Hunter!
That's Sweetie! Ah! I lunged forward as the fillies scurried beneath. My heart was beating like a drum, and I doubled over to help it calm down. I glanced behind me and found a very apologetic-looking Sweetie Belle. Oh, please don't do that again, I groaned. I nearly stepped on you.
I agree.
Rarity squeezed past 2 ponies to catch up with her sister.
You know better than that, Sweetie Belle,
she chimed in with a scold. Sweetie's ears fell back as she looked to the ground and mumbled an apology.
Oh, there you are, Hunter.
Abablum and Scootaloo wedged themselves into the circle that was apparently forming around me.
You know, for a tall fella like yourself, you're pretty hard to find,
Abablum chirped.
Doesn't help when he falls on his flank when you scare him either.
Scootaloo snickered. All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You startled me, I corrected.
Regardless, how are you enjoying your party?
Rarity asked, her smile seeming genuine.
It's not too much, I would hope.
I mean... My hand scratched the back of my head as I hesitated and tried to take in my surroundings again. The movement and music and chatter, it was all overwhelming. It was, at first, but it's good. They definitely didn't hold back.
Well, of course it's great,
Sweetie piped up with a beaming and proud smile.
Rarity spent all day working on it to make sure it was perfect. She even closed the boutique to work on this. Oh, Sweetie, please, you're giving me too much credit.
She waved a huff as she chuckled nervously. A strong blush was beginning to show through her pale white coat.
It was a group effort, really. Lyra was the true mastermind. It was her idea, and she found every pony to help with this. And if Pinkie Pie hadn't told us where to find the party supplies, we would have been much further behind.
These little rascals giving you trouble, Hunter? Noteworthy squeezed himself into our group with a playful smile, putting himself between me and Rarity. The foals began protesting, and he calmed them down with a wave of his huff. Hey, just joking, I'm just joking. he assured with a laugh. We're just catching up, I replied. Honestly, it's nice to see a few more familiar faces.
Hey, Arno, wanna play some party games with us?
Applebloom asked hopefully. Party games?
Yeah, come on, Rainbow Dash has been working all day on them.
Scootaloo said excitedly. Red flags fired up in my head. As she jumped up and buzzed her wings and tried to pull me with her, I looked to the back where the games were set up. Sure enough, a rainbow-colored mane was bobbing up and down in the crowd, watching over the others as they played.
Psh, please, more like half of the afternoon.
Rarity waved off disdainfully.
I still can't believe she was almost late to this. We had been working all day and she almost ruined it.
My eyes hadn't left Rainbow since I spotted her. I think I'm good, I quickly said. I'm a little bit too old for pin the tail on the donkey.
What's that supposed to mean?
Sweetie sounded a little hurt.
That's one of my favorites. Oh, you'll understand someday when you're older, sweetie.
Rarity assured her with a small smile as she pet her mane. She hesitated, though, and looked back to me.
Although, maybe you should go with them. It could be relaxing,
she offered. I'm sure it would be, but he can't. Noteworthy interjected. He put himself more between me and Rarity and looked up to give me a reassuring wink. He must have caught on to my growing discomfort. He already said he was going to tell me and some friends another story about when he was in the Everfree Forest, he explained, looking back to her. Something about that time you rode a manticore, right?
What, you rode a manticore?
Applebloom asked excitedly. Scootaloo began jumping in place.
That's so cool! Can we hear it too?
I held my hands up in defense as all three of the kids began to swarm me with questions. Hey, it wasn't as daring as it sounds, I chuckled. Honestly, it was kind of embarrassing, looking back. I was scared half to death most of the time. I snapped my fingers a couple times to collect my thoughts and motioned to Applebloom. It was actually that night your brother almost caught me when I was, visiting. Hey now, let's wait until we're with my friends before we start the story time, eh? Note offered as he nudged my leg. Besides, they haven't heard the story about your run-in with the Ursa, and they won't stop bugging me about it.
My word, you actually ran into one of those dreadful things out there?
Rarity gasped. Actually, I think ran from would be a better choice of words. Note snickered. Oh, har har. I scoffed, but I couldn't help my own smile.
Hey, we want to hear it too,
Sweetie Belle piped up. I glanced between the kids and Noteworthy, and all he offered was an indifferent shrug. I mean, more the merrier, eh? He suggested. I chuckled and shook my head, motioning for the girls to follow. Their eyes lit up and they trotted after me and my friend, with Rarity distantly in tow. Let's make sure we get a big enough table this time. We couldn't find a big enough table. The party was officially in full swing, and what initially started as a small group of Note's friends quickly grew into a large chunk of the party population over the course of an hour. From eavesdroppers at nearby tables getting sucked in to minglers telling their friends, everyone seemed to want to listen to the adventures of the beast of the Everfree. I wasn't used to this many eyes being on me. I was shaking from the attention, but even as anxiety ate away at my nerves, a smile broke through. I was actually having fun. At the end of one of my stories, Noteworthy would jump in to give me a break. He noticed I was stammering and getting a bit skitterish as more ponies started showing up, and thought it would be best for me to take a breather every now and then. And I couldn't have been more grateful for it. It didn't take long until Zecora found us, or rather, the crowd surrounding us, and her presence was both a blessing and a curse. While she provided some helpful insights with her experiences in the Everfree, I could also tell she was enjoying the stories of my misadventures in that forest a little too much, and she could not hold back the occasional tease. But for now, all eyes were on me. I stood atop a table above a swamp of eyes, all leaning in to catch every detail, and this time there was not a waitress to stop me. So there we were, 20 feet up in the air. Now, I'd never been to a rodeo before, and something told me it was this Manicore's first time too. Shoot, I was barely even used to bareback riding, Can't say horses, can't say donkeys, can't say cattle. Everyone's eyes were on me, and I tugged on my collar and coughed. Well, anyways, I chuckled and looked to the side, earning a few snickers for something I definitely should not have left up to interpretation. My legs were wrapped around its torso, just behind its wings, and I had a death grip on its mane for dear life, I continued, acting out my memories. And all the while, my eyes are just pinned to the stinger on the end of its tail, just waiting for the manticore to remember that it's there. Unfortunately for me, after realizing it couldn't shake me off, it did remember. Unfortunately for it, though, I am much more scared of stingers than I am of falling. I squatted low to be closer to my audience, and they all leaned in because of it. I nearly froze from the reaction, but I quickly had my train of thought back on track. I pushed myself to roll off the Manicore's back as the stinger came down, but the moment my brain realized what I was doing, I started locking up. My right hand closed around its mane as I started to fall, and the stinger, I kid you not, struck the Manticore in the back right between the wings. Now, I don't know which hurt more, getting stung by your own stinger, or having the full weight of a teenager suddenly hanging onto the hair around your neck, but we started to plummet, like, fast.
A manticore's toxin is truly quite frightening,
Zecora added, leaning into the table and looking to the other ponies.
A paralyzing agent that works fast as lightning. One prick is enough to stop a dozen falls, at which point it usually swallows the victim whole.
She turned to me with a knowing smile.
You were lucky to be quickest to avoid such a demise. I'm sure tricking the beast to stinging itself came as quite a surprise.
Yeah, I squeaked.
A cold film of sweat covered my back as I realized just how narrow of an escape I had made so many weeks ago.
You doing all right there, buddy? Nutworthy laughed. I coughed into my hand and tried to recover from the voice crack. Didn't know that. Whew. I sat down on the tabletop and looked above the crowd to some imaginary place. You know, it just has me thinking. If I had a bid for every time I ran into a manticore, well, I could probably buy myself a chocolate bar. I shrugged as I thought aloud, which, that isn't a lot of bits when you really think about it, but it's definitely more than I would have liked. I laughed at my own little joke as a chuckle came over parts of the crowd. It struck me again how many ponies had gathered around, but most notably of all was how they were looking at me. Instead of the usual distrustful eyes, many of them seemed content, happy even to hear me talk. I smiled to myself and got back to my feet. All right, so where were we? I was falling, right? Yeah. Okay, well, lucky me, there were plenty of branches to break our fall. I managed to catch a few of them before I got wrapped around one, but the Manicore? I whistled and made a downward motion with a finger, straight like a rock down into the brush beneath. So there I was, back at square one. Only this time, instead of the Apple Sisters' wonderful older brother, I now had a man-eating beast beneath me that I didn't know at the time was probably knocked out by its own poison. I figured I'd take my chances and stick around in the tree for the rest of the night. Finding my food could wait until morning. I clapped my hands together, drawing my story to a close. And there you have it, the time I rode a manticore. A piece of advice, if you ever think about trying it out yourself, don't. Now, if you will excuse me, I'm a little parched after all that talking. When I get back, I might tell you guys about the time I decided to go fishing in the river that runs through the Everfree.
Hearing your tale reminded me of the first time I ran into the beast.
Zecora smirked into her hoof.
But, to be fair, I wasn't as daring as yours in the least.
All eyes shifted to her as I stepped down from the table, and I felt the weight lift with them. I nearly collapsed as I broke free from the crowd. As I skirted around the edge of it on my way to the snack bar, my eyes couldn't help but linger on Zecora as she spoke. She was so confident, never stuttered in her words for a moment, and the natural rhythm in the way she spoke was captivating. It was amazing how comfortable she was around everyone, even with the cold reception she originally had, like mine. A part of me hoped that I could get to that point someday. The cupcakes were next to the punch bowl when I arrived at the snack table, and I was more than willing to give in to my temptation. There weren't very many left, but it looked like some pony was coming to restock the sweets from the kitchen. I blinked and snapped the rubber band around my wrist. Slip of the tongue, or thought, I reminded myself. I did not want to make a habit of it when I returned home. Still, something festered in the back of my head as the sole uninvited guest noticed my slip. Oddly enough, it didn't say a word, although a strange, almost sour taste began to linger in the back of my throat. With a grimace, I threw back a shot of punch in an attempt to wash it away.
Oh! Hey, Hunter! Do you like the cupcakes? I told you they were pretty good, didn't I?
What? Pinky! Hey, watch it! A pony protested as I backpedaled into them. I hastily apologized as the stallion left with his punch, and my eyes shot back to the mare who had been restocking the sweets. How I managed to overlook her bright pink coat is beyond me. Pinkie Pie lifted a fresh tray of cupcakes off of her snack cart with her teeth and placed it on the table. She stole a sideways glance at me, and her hoof brushed away her curtain of a mane to reveal a small smile. I didn't realize you were here, I admitted.
Oh, you mean the party, right?
Her hoof trailed in a lazy circle, and she glanced behind her with a small, dying hint of glee in her eye.
Gee, I wish I was,
she said in a longing voice.
Lair and Rarity really went full swing, didn't they? Just look at all those balloons and confetti.
She paused for a second before shaking her head and returning to work.
But nope, I can't. I'm a busy bee. Busy, buzzy.
Pinky noticed my look from her half-hearted attempt at a pun and coughed in her hoof before continuing.
I'm not technically allowed to attend any parties for a while. The princess said I need to learn to be more serious about a lot of things. But it's not technically attending the party if I'm stuck in the kitchen all the time. I ran it through Twilight and she ran it through Princess Celestia, and she decided to give me a new friend to make sure I didn't try to mingle while I restocked the party favors.
She accentuated her last line by waving towards the kitchen. My eyes followed and found a rather large stallion sitting next to the kitchen door. I wasn't sure if it was the stoic demeanor that contrasted the air around him, or uniformly kept mane that no other stallion had, but even without the golden armor, I could tell he wasn't the average partygoer. From across the atrium, he locked eyes with Pinky and made a tapping motion against his fetlock. Pinky withered slightly at his response and quickly turned back to work. I saw my open window and I took the leap. Well, you seem pretty busy and I'd hate to get you into any trouble, I lied, snagging a cupcake and slowly backing away.
Oh, it's no trouble,
Pinky waved obliviously.
Maybe next time we can have more time to talk?
It's your party. You told Lyra you'd have fun, I reminded myself. Breathe. Don't get snappy. Yeah. Maybe, I conceded, turning on my heel.
Oh, Hunter, Pinky, what a lovely surprise,
Rarity chirped as she approached from the table.
I was hoping I could catch you both at the same time. Oh, hey, Rarity,
Pinky greeted timidly, looking up from her work once more.
This isn't really a good time, remember? Oh, nonsense. I'm sure Mr. Bastion over there won't mind you staying up for just a few minutes more than usual.
Rarity waved at the guard across the room with a bright smile, faltering slightly when she received the same response as Pinky. She coughed into her hoof.
Right, well, I was really enjoying your stories of your time in the Everfree. Pinky, I think you would love them too. Such adventurous tales.
A little more adventurous than I would have liked, I added under my breath. The two deflated slightly, both having heard my small jab. In the short pause, I looked back to the table full of my friends and realized that Rarity was standing directly in my path. Pinky was still blocking off one of my sides. Maybe I could use the opportunity to squeeze out the other way. Backing towards the table, I locked eyes with Noteworthy, hoping he could play lifesaver for me one more time, just in case. He saw, leaned over next to Fluttershy, and tapped on her shoulder, motioning in my direction.
Hey, there you are, Hunter.
A cold chill ran down my spine, and the cupcake dropped out of my hand. Rainbow Dash came cantering to cut off my only exit. I was surrounded.
I've been looking for you all night,
she continued.
Why haven't you checked out any of the party games yet? Oh, Rainbow Dash, perfect,
Rarity chirped, quickly recovering from earlier.
I was just about to send some pony to get you.
I backed into the table, my fingertips brushing over its top. It was getting hard to hear my captors over the scattered thoughts that screamed white noise into my ears.
Yeah, Scootaloo found me and dragged me over. Told me about Hunter's stories, and I wanted to hear them for myself,
Rainbow said, turning to me.
No offense. I knew you had a bit of fight in you, but if anything Scootaloo said was true, I think you had a lot more than I gave you credit for.
Rainbow Dash,
Rarity snapped.
That is hardly appropriate.
What? He knows I'm just being playful. Ain't that right, Hunter?
She took a step towards me, and I instinctively lurched back. The crash of the table and shattering glass rang in the air, dampened by the music. Most of the party didn't seem to notice, but I suddenly felt more pairs of eyes staring at me than the three before me. Pinky, Rarity, and Rainbow froze with wary looks, and my eyes darted wildly between them, waiting for another to make a move.
What in tarnation is going on here?
Applejack demanded. A flood of relief came over me as I found her approaching behind Pinky. Maybe she could get me out of this.
Nothing,
Rainbow said defensively.
We were just trying to talk, I swear.
By backing him into a corner? Again?
Applejack pressed.
Don't you think we've done enough to the poor stallion?
That wasn't... We weren't...
Rarity sputtered, trying to wrap her head around the situation. She looked between me and Applejack, seemingly coming to the realization of how close she actually was, and took a few steps back.
I swear, that was not our intention,
she pleaded to me.
We weren't trying to make you feel uncomfortable.
You could have fooled us, Noteworthy interjected as he put himself between her and Rainbow. Fluttershy floated in the air close by him, her hooves folded anxiously against her barrel as she watched the scene play out before her. He put a hoof in front of Rainbow and pulled her back. Seriously, as if the guy ain't traumatized enough, you three have to hound him at his welcome party too.
Hey, watch it! Last I checked, we're the ones that helped throw this party,
Rainbow snapped. That doesn't give you the right to crash it, he shot back.
I wasn't trying to crash it, honest,
Pinky protested with a quivering voice. Her hooves tugged at her mane anxiously, and her eyes looked a little wet as she stared at me.
I just wanted to restock the cupcakes. I didn't want to make you feel any worse.
She tried to worm herself out of the circle she had found herself in, but her bright blue aura trapped her tail and held her in place.
Pinky, dear, you're starting to give me anxiety over this,
Rarity said. She tugged her head and Pinky's tail followed the horn.
If everybody could just quit making accusations for 1 minute, Girls!
Everyone flinched from Fluttershy's sudden outburst, and all eyes were on her. She swallowed the lump in her throat.
I'm sorry, but this just isn't the right time for this,
she continued as she floated over to me. Her hooves wrapped around my arm and tugged.
Come on, Hunter. Let's just go back to every pony else.
I numbly nodded at the idea, and allowed her to lead me through the minefield of eyes. My heart rate calmed with the tension in the air. No pony spoke a word for a while, It wasn't until we were a few steps out of the group that Rarity called after us.
Fluttershy, wait!
Fluttershy paused, and I with her. She looked past me to her friend.
If this isn't the right time, then I fear there never will be.
Rarity admitted.
These last few days of avoiding each other is only helping so much. And if we keep it up, it's only going to make any actual confrontation later all the more difficult. Just... please.
Her eyes flicked to mine before returning to my friend.
Just a few minutes. That's all I ask.
Fluttershy's grip tensed ever so slightly around my arm, and she looked to me expectantly. I was reminded that these were her friends too. This must have been painful for her. Part of me remembered that I did still have some debts to pay off. I took in a deep breath to calm my nerves, and it escaped as a heavy sigh. Sure. I shook my head. Just a few minutes.
And I'm staying with him too,
Fluttershy added by my side. A hopeful smile showed on Rarity's lips.
I wouldn't have it any other way,
she said to her friend. She motioned for the others to come closer. Rainbow brushed past Noteworthy to join her side, and Pinky's tail needed a little more motivation to drag the rest of her over.
Well, I suppose it would help to admit that we may have had some ulterior motives for throwing this party for you,
she began.
Don't get us wrong, though. This is still your welcome to Ponyville party,
Pinky quickly added.
But it's also a bit of a, we're really, really, really sorry for running you out of town and being a bunch of meanies party, too.
We messed up,
Rainbow chimed in bluntly. Unlike the others, she seemed to have a hard time lifting her eyes off of the floor.
A lot. Some of us more than others.
What we did to you was... it was horrible. And there is no good excuse for it,
Rarity continued.
After the princess spoke to us about your situation, it gave us a new perspective. To be torn from your home and family and then find a safe haven only to be run out of it and forced to live in the wilderness. I can't even begin to imagine what you must think of us. But we wanted to show you that we aren't all like that,
Pinky interjected. When our eyes met, she hesitated, and a look of guilt pulled her to stare down at my shoes.
I noticed you were having a hard time making friends around town, and that was probably my fault for all of the rumors from before. So when I overheard you and Lyra talking about a party, I thought it was a great idea. After all, that's how I got to meet most of my friends,
she added with a weak smile. Rarity took in a deep breath and paused, searching for the right words.
I know it's a long shot, but we wanted to let you know how sorry we felt. Do you think you could ever find it in your heart to forgive us for what we did to you? And give us a second chance?
I didn't speak right away. And even with the party music still ongoing, my own silence seemed to drown it out in this little group. All eyes were on me, yet I couldn't bring myself to meet any of them. Not even Fluttershy's hopeful pair next to me. I don't know.
Wait, what?
Rainbow asked.
Rainbow Dash, please,
Rarity said in a hushing tone.
It's not like we're owed any forgiveness after all we did. We're lucky he even agreed to talk to us.
Look, the things you all did to me... I was struggling to think. I should have been angry, or more upset than I was now, rather. Here before me were 3 of the ponies that had made my life a living hell, who turned the entire town against me. But when I looked around at the party they threw, the very same ponies that I hated, My head was tossed back into a sea of doubt. I can't just say forgive and forget and then brush it all under the rug like it never happened. I continued. It's going to take a lot more than a party like this to set things right. If they even can be made right at this point. But as far as apologies go, this is a pretty good one. I don't think anyone's ever thrown a party this big for me. Much less to apologize for something. It's a step in the right direction. So, why was this so hard to say? Thanks. It really means a lot. I shouldn't have taken my eyes off them. Before I knew it, Pinky had closed the distance and had me wrapped up in another bone-crushing hug. My t-shirt was quickly growing damp again, but her cry sounded much happier this time than the last. It looked like part of her mane even sprang up to its usual self a bit.
Thank you.
She sniffed with a hopeful squeeze.
I'm gonna make this all up to you. You'll see.
A tremor came over her body and she pulled herself away with a gasp.
The cake! I need to get it out of the oven now!
She launched herself off of me and soared over the heads of everyone in the room, between us and the kitchen, even the head of the guard who had just squeezed his way to our little group. He stood there, dumbfounded like me, looking between us and the kitchen entrance. With a groan, he turned back and tried to worm his way through the partygoers once more. Hey, I think Zecora finished her story, Noteworthy pointed out, breaking our silence. He started walking back to our table, but stopped to give me a playful nudge as he passed. Looks like she's winning them over. Hope we can one-up her mystery story if you're planning on still being the coolest pony to live in the Everfree. It made me feel good seeing him lighthearted again. He managed to lift my spirits with him. Okay, come on. No one ever said it was a competition, I called after him.
Oh, now this I gotta hear.
Applejack chuckled. She gave me a nod as she followed. Fluttershy finally released my arm, and as her hooves touched the floor again, she broke into a prance after her friend with a satisfied spring in her step.